He didn't just break her heart, he shattered her world into a million pieces. For 20 years, Emma Vance had been the perfect wife, the silent partner, the woman who sacrificed her own dreams so her husband Michael Sterling could build his empire. Then one rainy Tuesday, he came home, looked at her without a flicker of emotion, and said, "I've met someone else. She's everything I need now." That someone was Tiffany Hayes, half her age and heir to a fortune. Emma was left with a modest settlement, a broken spirit, and a future that looked like a barren wasteland. But what Michael, Tiffany, and the entire town of Maple Creek didn't know was that a forgotten letter was already on its way. A letter that would change everything and turn the discarded wife into the most powerful woman they had ever seen. The silence in their sprawling, custom-built house in Maple Creek, Washington, was the first thing that hit you. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket of unspoken resentments. For 20 years, Emma Vance had curated this life, this home, this man. She had met Michael Sterling in college. He was the ambitious business major with fire in his eyes and holes in his shoes. She was the brilliant art history student with a passion for impressionism and a quiet, steady heart. She dropped out in her final year to support him taking on 2 jobs so he could focus on his first tech startup. Every success he had was built on the foundation of her sacrifice. Her forgotten degree, her postponed dreams of curating a gallery, the friends she'd lost touch with because Michael's networking events always took precedence. His company, Sterling Innovations, was now a multi-million-dollar player in the logistics software game. Their house, featured in Pacific Northwest Living, was a testament to his success. But it was Emma who had managed the contractors, chosen the marble for the countertops, and planted the weeping willows in the backyard with her own hands. The change had been gradual, insidious. At first it was late nights at the office, then business trips that stretched longer than scheduled. He started critiquing her clothes, her weight, the way she wasn't keeping up. He'd say things like, "Ellie, you need to be more aggressive, more polished. When I walk into a room, my wife needs to reflect my status." The woman's name was Tiffany Hayes. Emma found out not through a dramatic confrontation, but through the cold, impersonal discovery of a credit card statement left on the counter. Charges for a suite at the Fairmont Olympic in Seattle jewelry from a designer Emma had only ever dreamed of window shopping dinners at Canlis. Tiffany was 26, the daughter of a shipping magnate with a manufactured pout and a popular Instagram account filled with photos from yachts and ski chalets. She was everything Emma wasn't: young, carefree, and born into the world Michael had clawed his way into. The day he told her was a Tuesday in October. The sky outside was a weeping gray, the rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Michael walked in his tailored suit, impeccable, not a drop of rain on him from the short walk from the climate-controlled garage. He didn't even take off his coat. "Emma, we need to talk," he said, his voice flat, rehearsed. She was in the kitchen, a smudge of flour on her cheek from the bread she was baking, his favorite rosemary sourdough. Her heart, which had been in a state of low-grade anxiety for months, seized in her chest. "What is it, Michael?" "This isn't working anymore," he began, the classic cowardly opening. "I'm not happy. We've grown apart." Emma simply stared at him, her hands frozen on the dough. "Grown apart? Michael, I've spent 20 years growing towards you. There is no part of my life that you haven't shaped or directed." A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. He hated being reminded of their humble beginnings. "Don't be so dramatic. It's a natural progression. People change. My needs have changed. Your needs." She repeated the words, tasting like ash. "And what about my needs?" "That's the thing, Ellie," he said, and this was the part that would haunt her for months. "I don't think you even know what you need anymore. You've just been here." He gestured around the perfect kitchen, the perfect house, as if it were a cage she had built for herself, and then he delivered the final fatal blow. "I've met someone. Her name is Tiffany Hayes. I'm in love with her. I'm leaving you." The world tilted on its axis. The smell of baking bread suddenly made her nauseous. Tiffany Hayes. The girl from the charity gala, the one you said was an intern for her father's company, "It doesn't matter how it started," he said, his voice cold. "It matters that it's real. My lawyer will be in touch with yours. I'll be generous, of course. You'll be well taken care of." Generous. He used the word as if he were bestowing a great gift upon her, not dismantling a life she had co-authored. He was buying her silence, her swift and quiet exit. The house would be sold. He would give her a settlement that to anyone else would seem substantial, but to him was little more than a rounding error in his vast fortune. He was pruning a part of his life that no longer fit his brand. She didn't cry. Not then. She was too numb, too shocked. She watched him turn and walk out the door, out of their house, out of their life, without a single look back. The front door clicked shut, a sound of absolute finality. Emma stood in the silent kitchen for a long time. The only sound was the frantic beating of her own heart and the gentle ding of the oven timer announcing that the bread, his favorite bread, was done. She slowly opened the oven door, pulled out the perfectly browned loaf, and with a guttural sob that tore from the depths of her soul, she threw it against the cold marble wall, where it shattered just like her life into 100 useless pieces. The weeks that followed were a blur of humiliating logistics. Lawyers with pitying eyes, movers who handled her possessions with impersonal efficiency, and the cold, sharp sting of Maple Creek gossip. Emma saw the triumphant posts from Tiffany's Instagram account, photos of her and Michael in Paris on a private jet clinking champagne glasses. The caption on one read, "Finally found a love that matches my ambition." Dad. Power couple. Upgraded. Emma moved into a small, sterile apartment on the other side of town, a place with beige walls and a view of a parking lot. The generous settlement from Michael was enough to live on, but not enough to live. It was a pension for her years of service, calculated and cold. She felt invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of a life that was no longer hers. Her friends, mostly wives of Michael's business associates, offered platitudes and then slowly drifted away. She was a social liability, a reminder of what could happen to any of them. She was 45 years old, with a 20-year gap in her resume, and a spirit that felt ancient and weary. She spent her days in a thick fog of grief, sometimes not leaving the apartment for days. The vibrant, intelligent woman who loved art and history was gone, replaced by a hollow shell. It was on one such day, a particularly bleak Thursday in late November, that the letter arrived. It was wedged between a credit card offer and a utility bill. The envelope was thick, creamy cardstock, the kind of paper that signaled importance. The return address was a law firm, Abernathy & Sons, located in a place she'd never heard of, Cannon Beach, Oregon. Her brow furrowed. She knew no one in Oregon. Tearing it open, her eyes scanned the formal typewritten text. Dear Ms. Emma Vance, it is with regret that we inform you of the passing of your great-aunt, Ms. Genevieve Vance. We are the executors of her estate. Ms. Vance's last will and testament requires your presence for the reading to be held at our offices on December 5th at 10:00 a.m. Please contact our office to confirm your attendance. Genevieve Vance. The name was a whisper from a distant past, her father's aunt. A woman Emma had met only once at a family reunion when she was a child of 7. She remembered a tall, imposing woman with wild silver hair pinned up with what looked like paintbrushes, eyes that sparkled with a fierce intelligence, and hands stained with flecks of cobalt blue and cadmium yellow. Genevieve was the family eccentric, the mad artist who had run away from a wealthy East Coast family in the 1950s to live a reclusive life on the Oregon coast. The family spoke of her in hushed, disapproving tones as if she were a cautionary tale. Emma assumed it was a mistake, or that her great-aunt had perhaps left her a dusty painting or a box of old books. Still, the letter was a disruption, a single unexpected stone tossed into the stagnant pond of her misery. A trip to the coast, a change of scenery. Anything was better than staring at these beige walls. She called the law firm and confirmed she would be there, her voice sounding small and unfamiliar to her own ears. The drive down to Cannon Beach was cathartic. The relentless gray of the Seattle suburbs gave way to the majestic, moody beauty of the Oregon coast. Towering pines shrouded in mist lined the highway, As she drove, the Pacific Ocean appeared vast and churning, its waves crashing against the shore with a relentless, powerful rhythm. It felt primal, cleansing. Cannon Beach was a small artistic town dwarfed by the iconic Haystack Rock rising from the surf. The law office of Abernathy and Sons was a quaint cedar-shingled building just off the main street, smelling of old paper, leather, and sea salt. Mr. Abernathy was a man in his late 60s with a kind, weathered face and a shock of white hair. He greeted her with a warm handshake, his eyes holding a mixture of sympathy and something else. Anticipation. "Ms. Vance, thank you for coming. I was your great-aunt's lawyer and friend for over 40 years. Please call me Emma," she said softly. "I'm afraid I didn't know her well. I'm not sure why I'm here." Genevieve was a very private woman, Mr. Abernathy said, gesturing for her to sit in a worn leather chair opposite his large oak desk. She was also quite remarkable. She specified in her will that it was to be read only to you. No other family members were to be contacted or included. This was odd. Genevieve had other relatives closer in lineage than Emma. Mr. Abernathy cleared his throat and put on a pair of reading glasses. He picked up a thick, sealed document. "All right, then. Let's proceed." He broke the seal and began to read in a formal, steady voice. There was legal jargon, clauses and subclauses. Emma's mind began to wander, thinking about the long drive back. And then he got to the section titled Bequests and Distributions. "To my great-niece, Emma Vance, a woman I met only once, but whose quiet curiosity I never forgot, and whose life I have observed from afar, has been one of quiet sacrifice. To her I leave the entirety of my estate." Emma blinked. "The entirety. I'm sorry, Mr. Abernathy, but I'm sure her estate can't be much. A small house, perhaps, some savings." Mr. Abernathy paused, looking at her over the rim of his glasses. A slow smile spread across his face. "Emma," he said, his voice dropping the formal tone. Genevieve was not just a painter. She was a brilliant, unacknowledged genius. She was a chemist by training before she devoted herself to art. In the 1970s, to fund her work, she developed and patented a series of industrial-grade chemical binders and polymers. Things used in everything from marine paint to aerospace manufacturing. He slid a financial portfolio across the desk. It was 2 inches thick. She sold the initial patents to a major corporation for a modest sum, but she was smart. She retained a small perpetual royalty percentage. A fraction of a cent on every gallon, every unit. Over 40 years, Emma, that fraction has grown. He let that sink in for a moment. Emma's heart was hammering against her ribs. Furthermore, he continued, turning a page. Genevieve was a shrewd investor. She used that royalty income to quietly acquire commercial real estate in Portland and Seattle during the downturns. And then there is her art. While the world never knew her name, a very small, very elite circle of collectors did. Her personal collection, housed in her studio, contains not only her own work, but several pieces by now famous artists she traded with early in their careers. "We've had a preliminary appraisal." He took a deep breath. "Emma, the royalty patents generate approximately $15 million a year. The real estate portfolio is currently valued at just over $150 million. The art collection is estimated conservatively at another $200 million, and that's before we account for her liquid assets and stock portfolio." He took off his glasses and looked at her directly. "Your great-aunt has left you an estate with a net worth of approximately $520 million. The room went silent. The only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner and the distant cry of a seagull. Emma stared at the man, then at the portfolio, then out the window at the gray, churning ocean. Her mind couldn't process the number. It was abstract, meaningless. $520 million. She thought of Michael. She thought of his generous settlement. She thought of Tiffany's smug Instagram posts. A strange, hysterical giggle bubbled up in her throat. She pressed her lips together, but it escaped anyway, a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Mr. Abernathy watched her, his expression gentle. "It's a lot to take in," he said softly. Emma Vance, the discarded wife. The invisible woman looked at the lawyer, tears now streaming down her face, and nodded. Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling not with sorrow but with the earth-shattering, terrifying, and exhilarating power of a world that had just been reborn. Yes, it is. For 2 days, Emma stayed in a small hotel overlooking Cannon Beach, the financial portfolio lying on the adjacent bed like a strange alien artifact. She walked the beach for hours, the cold, salty wind whipping at her face, the immense power of the ocean a mirror to the tidal wave that had just crashed into her life. The numbers were still just numbers too vast to comprehend. $520, $1,000, $1,000. It wasn't real money. It was a concept, a weapon, a responsibility. On the 3rd day, she met with Mr. Abernathy again. He had arranged for her to see Genevieve's house and studio, a secluded property nestled in the coastal hills hidden from the main road by a dense grove of ancient Sitka spruce trees. The house was a marvel of modernist architecture, all glass and cedar built into the hillside with a panoramic view of the Pacific. It was minimalist and serene, but the studio was where Genevieve's soul lived. It was a massive barn-like structure with a soaring ceiling and a north-facing wall made entirely of glass. Canvases, some larger than cars, were stacked against the walls. The air smelled of turpentine oil paint and linseed oil. It was the smell of creation. In a locked, climate-controlled room off the main studio was the collection. Emma, the forgotten art history student, gasped. There were paintings she had only ever seen in textbooks. An early moody landscape by Rothko, a small exquisite watercolor by Georgia O'Keeffe, a charcoal sketch by de Kooning, and everywhere Genevieve's own work. It was breathtaking, abstract, powerful, and filled with a raw, elemental energy that seemed to capture the very spirit of the coast. Her great-aunt wasn't just a painter, she was a master. She never wanted fame, Mr. Abernathy explained, walking beside her. She said fame was a cage. She just wanted the freedom to create. The patents gave her that freedom. Standing there amidst all that hidden genius and quiet power, something inside Emma shifted. The fog of grief and humiliation began to burn away, replaced by a nascent spark of purpose. This wasn't just money. This was a legacy. Her great-aunt, another woman the world had overlooked, had built an empire in secret, and she had passed the torch to Emma. "What do I do first?" she asked Mr. Abernathy, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "First," he said with a smile, "we assemble your team. You're no longer just a private citizen, Emma. You're a corporation. You need the best financial advisors, tax lawyers, and asset managers. I've already taken the liberty of preparing a list of the most discreet and effective firms in the country." For the next month, Emma lived and worked out of Genevieve's house, a place that felt more like home than the Maple Creek mansion ever had. She became a student again, devouring information. She held conference calls with teams from J.P. Morgan Private Bank and Goldman Sachs. She learned about trusts, tax shelters, and philanthropic foundations. She was sharp. A quick study, her mind so long dormant now firing on all cylinders. The first major decision was what to do about her old life. The temptation to storm back into Maple Creek, buy the biggest house, and rub Michael's face in her newfound fortune was immense. It was a primal, satisfying fantasy. But as she sat on her great-aunt's deck watching eagles soar over the ocean, she realized that would be playing Michael's game. It would still be about him. Genevieve had lived a life of quiet, unassailable power. She hadn't needed the world's validation. That was the real lesson. That was the real legacy. Emma made a plan, a quiet plan. She hired a top-tier wealth management firm based not in Seattle but in New York, ensuring a layer of distance. She established a blind trust, the Vance Trust, to manage the assets. She legally changed her name back to Emma Vance, formally shedding the sterling name like a snake sheds its skin. Then she began to quietly, surgically invest in herself. She found a luxury condominium in downtown Seattle, a sleek modern apartment with breathtaking views of Elliott Bay. It was elegant but understated. No ostentatious mansion. She furnished it with a mix of modern classics and a few of Genevieve's smaller personal paintings. She hired a personal stylist and a trainer. The transformation wasn't about becoming someone else, but about rediscovering the woman she'd been before Michael. The timid, apologetic posture she'd adopted over the years was replaced by a confident stride. She cut her hair into a chic, sophisticated bob. She bought clothes that made her feel powerful, not just clothes that Michael would have approved of. The most important step, however, was for her soul. She re-enrolled at the University of Washington to finally complete her art history degree. She sat in lecture halls with students half her age, not as a wealthy benefactor, but as a peer. Simply Emma Vance, the woman with an insatiable curiosity about the Italian Renaissance. It was there she found her footing, her voice, her passion again. The anonymity was a balm. She also started laying the groundwork for her true purpose. Working with Mr. Abernathy, she began the process of establishing the Genevieve Vance Foundation for the Arts, an organization dedicated to providing grants to emerging female artists, the kind of women the world so often overlooked. Through it all, she remained a ghost to her old life. She changed her phone number. She deleted her old, sparse social media profiles. To Maple Creek and to Michael Sterling, Emma had simply vanished, faded away into the obscurity he had consigned her to. He had no idea that while he was living his loud, flashy life with Tiffany, his quiet, forgotten ex-wife was silently assembling a kingdom. While Emma was meticulously building her new reality, Michael Sterling was discovering that his own was built on a foundation of sand. The life with Tiffany Hayes, which had seemed so shiny and perfect from a distance, was proving to be a gilded cage. Tiffany was a creature of her environment. Her world revolved around appearances, status, and the constant, relentless acquisition of more. Their new life together was a performance piece, played out for social media and the society pages. They bought a larger, more ostentatious mansion in Medina, a neighborhood that made their old Maple Creek home look like a cottage. It had a tennis court, a 7-car garage for their growing collection of supercars, and a staff to manage it all. But there was no warmth, no soul. Michael, who had once prided himself on being a self-made man, now found himself constantly trying to impress Tiffany's father, a gruff old money patriarch named Arthur Hayes, who viewed Michael with thinly veiled contempt. To Arthur, Michael would always be new money, a flashy upstart who had married into the dynasty. At family dinners in the Hayes palatial estate, Michael was subjected to subtle digs about his background, his business decisions, his taste in wine. Sterling Innovations. Cute name, Arthur had once remarked, swirling a glass of vintage Bordeaux. A bit small fry, isn't it? Logistics software. It's all just moving boxes around in the cloud, right? Tiffany, far from defending him, would just laugh her tinkling, empty laugh. Oh, Daddy, be nice. Michael's trying his best. The financial pressure was immense. Tiffany's spending habits were astronomical. Couture gowns for galas she attended, once spontaneous trips to Dubai, redecorating their new mansion on a whim. Michael's company was successful, but it wasn't an infinite well of cash. He started making riskier business decisions, chasing bigger, faster returns to keep up with the lifestyle she demanded. He also started to miss Emma, though he would never admit it even to himself. He missed the quiet stability she provided. He missed her uncanny ability to see the flaw in a business plan he'd missed. He missed how she managed their finances with quiet competence, creating a buffer of security that had allowed him to take calculated risks. With Emma, he had been building an empire. With Tiffany, he was just funding a spectacle. There were practical things, too. He'd come home from a grueling day, his head spinning with a complex problem at work, wanting to talk it through. But Tiffany's eyes would glaze over. She'd interrupt him to show him a new pair of shoes she'd bought, or to complain about the caterer for her upcoming charity luncheon. He was lonelier in this grand mansion with this beautiful woman than he had ever been in his life. One night, after a particularly condescending dinner with Tiffany's parents, he found himself driving through their old Maple Creek neighborhood. He drove past their old house. A new family had moved in. A child's bicycle was lying on the lawn where Emma's rose garden used to be. A profound, aching sense of loss washed over him. He had traded something real for something hollow. Curiosity gnawed at him. What had happened to Emma? He'd assumed she was living a quiet, diminished life on his settlement. He had his assistant do a discreet search, but they found almost nothing. Her old phone number was disconnected. She wasn't on social media. There was no public record of her address. It was as if she had ceased to exist. She probably moved back to her parents in Ohio or something, Tiffany said dismissively when he mentioned it. Living a simple life. It's for the best, really. She was never cut out for this world, darling. Michael agreed, but a part of him felt a chill. The quiet, predictable woman he had cast aside had vanished without a trace, and the silence she left behind was more unsettling than any angry phone call or public scene would have been. He told himself it was for the best, that he had made the right choice for his ambition, for his brand. But late at night, when the house was quiet and Tiffany was asleep in their cavernous bedroom, Michael Sterling would lie awake staring into the darkness and wonder if in his desperate climb to the top he had thrown away the only thing that had ever truly held him up. A year and a half after the divorce, a new name began to circulate in Seattle's elite philanthropic and art circles, Emma Vance. It started as a whisper. The University of Washington's Art History Department received a massive anonymous donation to fund a new wing. A struggling local theater company on the verge of bankruptcy was saved by a last-minute seven-figure gift from a mysterious E. Vance. Then came the Genevieve Vance Foundation for the Arts. It burst onto the scene with an audacious inaugural prize, the Vance Vanguard Award, a $250,000 unrestricted grant, and a solo exhibition at a prestigious Seattle gallery awarded to a single game-changing female artist from the Pacific Northwest. The art world was set ablaze. Who was this Genevieve Vance, and who was the person behind the foundation? The foundation's president and public face was a highly respected former curator from the Seattle Art Museum. But the driving force, the enigmatic chair of the board, remained out of the public eye. Curiosity mounted. The city's old guard and new money tech titans were all asking the same question. Who is Emma Vance? Emma, meanwhile, had quietly graduated summa cum laude with her degree in art history. The shy, heartbroken woman was gone. In her place was a poised, articulate, and deeply knowledgeable woman who moved with an effortless confidence. She had found her purpose not in spending money, but in wielding it with precision and grace to change lives. She sat on the board of her foundation, guiding its mission, her insights into the art world proving invaluable. She also found a new, quiet kind of happiness. She met a man, Dr. Heiress Thorne, a visiting professor of architectural history at the university. He was kind, brilliant, with a gentle wit, and no interest in her wealth, which he was not even aware of for the first few months they knew each other. He was drawn to her mind, her passion for art, and the quiet strength in her eyes. Their relationship grew slowly, organically, built on shared interests and mutual respect. Everything her marriage to Michael had not been. The whispers about Michael Sterling, on the other hand, were of a different nature. His company, Sterling Innovations, had taken a hit. A risky, over-leveraged acquisition had gone sour, and rumors were circulating about cash flow problems. He seemed stressed, desperate, even at the few social functions he and Tiffany still attended. Their public displays of affection now looked strained, their smiles brittle. The collision of these two worlds was inevitable. It was destined to happen at the city's premier social event of the year, the Seattle Art Museum's annual gala, the Luminary Ball. It was the one event that brought together everyone, old money, tech billionaires, artists, and philanthropists. Michael and Tiffany were attending out of a sense of obligation, a need to maintain appearances despite their mounting troubles. Michael hoped to corner a potential investor to secure a lifeline for his struggling company. Tiffany was there simply to be seen, draped in a garishly expensive designer gown and diamonds that seemed to weigh her down. Emma was attending for a very different reason. The museum was honoring the Genevieve Vance Foundation as the city's most impactful new philanthropic force, and for the first time the foundation's mysterious chair, Emma Vance, had agreed to make a public appearance and accept the award. She chose her outfit with the care of a general preparing for a decisive battle. It was not a flashy ball gown, but a custom-made, exquisitely tailored evening suit in a deep emerald green silk. It was powerful, elegant, and utterly modern. Around her neck she wore a simple but stunning diamond necklace, a piece she had bought for herself from Genevieve's private jewelry collection. As she entered the gala with heiress thorn on her arm, a hush fell over the room. People turned, whispering. This was her. This was the woman who had endowed the new university wing. This was the mind behind the Vance Vanguard Award. She was radiant, poised, a vision of quiet power. And across the crowded, glittering ballroom, Michael Sterling stopped dead, a glass of champagne halfway to his lips. He stared, his mind refusing to process what his eyes were seeing. It was Emma. But it wasn't. This woman was a stranger. She was confident, serene, and surrounded by an aura of influence he could feel from 50 yards away. Tiffany followed his gaze. "My God!" She breathed, her voice a mixture of shock and venom. "Is that your ex-wife?" She looked Emma up and down, her eyes narrowing at the obvious quality of her suit, the brilliance of her diamonds. "What is she doing here? And who is that man with her?" Michael couldn't speak. His world had just been turned upside down. The mousy, discarded woman he had left behind had somehow transformed into the most commanding presence in the room. All the whispers he had heard over the past year, the mysterious philanthropist, the powerful new player in the art world, Vance, all suddenly clicked into place with a sickening thud. It was her. It had been her all along, and he, in his blind arrogance, had never had a clue. The ballroom buzzed with energy. Michael felt rooted to the spot, a cold dread creeping up his spine. He watched as the museum director, a formidable woman named Clara Bellwether, approached Emma and greeted her with the warmth and deference reserved for the most important of patrons. He saw heads of industry people he had been trying to get a meeting with for months, gravitating towards Emma's circle, their body language showing respect, even awe. "This is impossible," Tiffany hissed beside him, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his arm. "Where did she get that kind of money? Did she sue you? Did you give her more in the settlement than you told me?" The accusation hung in the air, thick and ugly. "No," Michael managed to say, his voice hoarse. "The settlement was final. This is something else." He needed to get closer to understand. He started to move through the crowd, dragging Tiffany with him, his mind racing through 100 illogical scenarios. Had she won the lottery, met, and married some reclusive billionaire? Nothing made sense. The evening's program began. After the dinner service, Clara Bellwether took to the stage. Tonight she began, her voice resonating through the grand hall. "We are here to celebrate art, and to celebrate those who ensure that art continues to thrive in our city. This year we honor a new and transformative force for good, the Genevieve Vance Foundation. In less than a year, the foundation has already redefined what it means to support our creative community." A professionally produced video played on the large screens, showcasing the artists the foundation had funded, the programs it had launched. It was impressive, slick, and powerful. And now, Clara continued, "It is my great honor to present the Luminary Award to the visionary founder and chair of the foundation. A woman whose passion and generosity are matched only by her discretion. Please welcome for the first time publicly, Ms. Emma Vance." A wave of polite, then thunderous applause filled the room. Emma walked gracefully towards the stage, her composure absolute. She took the crystal award from Clara, smiled warmly at the audience, and stepped up to the podium. "Thank you, Clara. Thank you to the museum." She began, her voice clear and steady, amplified by the microphone. It was the same voice Michael had heard every day for 20 years, but it was imbued with a new timbre of confidence and authority. "My great-aunt Genevieve Vance believed that art was not a luxury, but a necessity. She believed that a society that does not support its artists has lost its soul. She was a brilliant artist herself, a woman who worked in obscurity, never seeking fame, only the freedom to create. This foundation is her legacy, and it is my profound honor to carry it forward." She spoke for 5 minutes, her speech elegant, intelligent, and inspiring. She spoke of the power of women's voices in the arts and the Foundation's commitment to ensuring those voices were heard. She didn't stumble. She didn't waver. She was magnificent. Michael watched, paralyzed. Every word she spoke was a testament to the woman he had failed to see, the intellect he had dismissed, the passion he had sought to extinguish. He had called her unpolished, unambitious. He had told her she didn't know what she wanted. And here she was commanding the attention of the most powerful people in the city, her purpose clear and her impact undeniable. When the speech ended, the room erupted in a standing ovation. As Emma walked off the stage, she was immediately surrounded by a throng of admirers. Michael saw his chance. He had to talk to her. He had to know. He pushed his way through the crowd, ignoring Tiffany's protests. He finally broke through the circle and stood before her. Emma. She turned. Her eyes, clear and calm, met his. There was no anger in them, no pain. There was something far worse, polite, indifferent recognition. Michael, she said, her tone as if greeting a distant, unremarkable acquaintance. I'm surprised to see you here. Ellie, I don't understand, he stammered, feeling foolish and small. All of this, the foundation, the money. How? A small, knowing smile touched her lips. It turns out my family had a few secrets. My great-aunt was a very clever woman. Dr. Heiress Thorne stepped to her side, placing a gentle hand on her arm. Emma, my love, the director of the Tate Modern, is waiting to speak with you. Emma turned to Heiress, her entire demeanor softening, her smile becoming genuine and warm. It was a look she had once reserved only for Michael, and the sight of it was like a knife in his gut. She turned back to Michael. It was interesting seeing you again, she said, the dismissal in her tone absolute. I hope you have the life you wanted. And with that she turned and walked away, absorbed back into a world that was entirely of her own making, a world where he had no place. Michael stood there frozen as the crowd swirled around him. Tiffany finally caught up her face, a mask of fury. The life he wanted, she spat, her voice a low, vicious whisper. Are you kidding me? We're on the verge of bankruptcy because of your stupid business deals, and she's standing there like a queen? You let that walk away, you idiot, you absolute blind idiot. Her words hit him harder than any physical blow. She was right. He had thrown away a diamond, convinced it was a common stone, only to see it picked up by someone else and placed in the crown it had always deserved. He had sought an upgrade, a trophy wife, and in the process, he had discarded a true partner, a hidden empress. The full, crushing weight of his colossal mistake finally landed on him, and in the middle of the glittering gala, Michael Sterling felt the first terrifying tremors of his entire world crumbling to dust. The fallout from the Luminary Ball was not a single explosion, but a slow, creeping fire that consumed every corner of Michael Sterling's life. The morning after, his phone, usually buzzing with calls from business associates and sycophants, was eerily silent. The city's power players were all talking about one person, and it wasn't him. It was Emma Vance. Her name was on the lips of every CEO, every investor, every society columnist. She was the city's brilliant, beautiful new mystery, and he was the fool who had let her go. His first tangible taste of this new reality came 2 days later. He finally cornered Marcus Thorne, the venture capitalist he'd been hoping to secure for a crucial round of funding at their exclusive athletic club. Marcus, good to see you, Michael said, forcing a confident smile as he approached the older man on the squash court. I was hoping we could reschedule our lunch. Things have been hectic. Marcus turned, wiping his brow with a towel. His expression was cool, unreadable. Michael. Actually, I was going to call you. We're going to pass on the latest round. The board feels the risk profile is too high at the moment. The risk profile, Michael's smile faltered. Marcus, the projections are solid. We're on the verge of a major breakthrough. Are you? Marcus said, his gaze unflinching. The word is you're over-leveraged. that the acquisition of Logimax was a Hail Mary, not a strategy. You know, I had a fascinating conversation at the gala with Emma Vance's financial advisor. The precision of their long-term strategy. It's a masterclass. That's the kind of stability the market respects. He clapped Michael lightly on the shoulder, a gesture not of camaraderie but of dismissal. Best of luck, Michael. You're going to need it. It was a death sentence delivered with a country club smile. With Marcus Thorne out, other investors pulled back like a receding tide, leaving Sterling Innovations beached and gasping on the shore. The calls from his bankers began their once friendly tones replaced with the clipped, impatient language of default. The fire spread to his home. The Grand Medina mansion, once a symbol of his arrival, now felt like a mausoleum. The silence was broken only by the sound of his and Tiffany's bitter, escalating arguments. "They're laughing at me, Michael," she shrieked during their final spectacular fight, throwing a crystal vase against the wall where a bland, abstract painting had replaced one of Emma's carefully chosen landscapes. "My friends, my parents, everyone is asking how I could be married to the man who threw away a $500 million woman for me." She said the last word with a self-loathing that she immediately redirected back at him. "You lied. You sold me a bill of goods. You're not a king. You're just a desperate little man who got lucky for a while." "I made you!" he roared back, his composure finally shattering. "You were nothing but a party girl before you met me. And you were nothing but a middle manager with bad taste before your wife bankrolled your dreams," she retorted, her words hitting their mark with surgical precision. "She was your class, your stability, your brain, and you traded her for a handbag. Well, this handbag is walking out." The next day, a team of movers arrived, dispatched by her father. They efficiently stripped the house of everything she had brought into it, which Michael realized with a sickening lurch was almost everything of value. She left him with the mortgage, the mountain of debt, and the echoing emptiness. The divorce papers filed by her father's famously ruthless legal team were a final insult, demanding a settlement that aimed to pick clean the bones of his collapsing empire. 6 months after the gala, Sterling Innovations was officially bankrupt. The name he had built, the brand he had curated with such obsessive care, was now a byword for failure in the Puget Sound Business Journal. Emma, meanwhile, never looked back. She did not orchestrate Michael's downfall, nor did she revel in it. She was too busy building. The Genevieve Vance Foundation became a pillar of the national arts community. Emma sat at the head of the boardroom table, not as a figurehead, but as a sharp, decisive leader. She could dissect a budget with the same skill she used to analyze a Titian. She flew to New York to meet with museum boards, to London to consult with auction houses, always with heiress by her side, their partnership a quiet, powerful hum of mutual admiration. She poured her soul into honoring her great-aunt. She commissioned a world-renowned architect, a woman known for her sensitive, light-filled designs, to transform the Cannon Beach property. It would not be a stuffy museum, but the Vance Institute, a working center for art, chemistry, and conservation, with a residency program for emerging female artists. It was a place of creation, just as Genevieve would have wanted. One chilly evening, about a year after his life had completely unraveled, Michael found himself working a catering gig at a high-end restaurant. It was a humiliating cash-in-hand job found through a temp agency, a desperate measure to pay the rent on his dingy one-bedroom apartment. He was clearing plates, his face a neutral mask, when he saw them enter. Emma and heiress. They didn't see him. Why would they? He was just part of the scenery. Emma looked radiant. She was wearing a simple black dress, her hair cut in an even more sophisticated style. She was laughing at something heiress said, her face illuminated with a genuine, unburdened joy that he couldn't remember ever seeing when she was with him. They were seated at a prime table, greeted warmly by the owner. Michael's supervisor told him to stay away from that section. A more senior waiter would handle it. He retreated to the kitchen, the clatter of dishes, a deafening roar in his ears, his hands trembling as he stacked dirty plates. He was invisible to her, a ghost from a former life she had long since left behind. Sometime later, Emma and Heiress were on the deck of the nearly completed Vance Institute, the scent of salt and cedar in the air. A blanket was wrapped around their shoulders as they watched the sun dip below the churning Pacific horizon, painting the sky in fiery strokes of orange and purple. "It's beautiful," Heiress said softly, holding her close. "Genevieve would be so proud of what you've done." "I hope so." Emma replied, her voice filled with quiet emotion. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a profound sense of peace. "For the longest time, I thought my life was the story of what Michael built. I was just a supporting character. It took losing all of that to realize my story hadn't even started yet." She looked out at the vast ocean. "It's funny. He thought leaving me was the end of my world. But all he did was kick me out of a small, cramped room and force me to see the entire universe that was waiting outside. He took my past, but he gave me back my future." Her victory was not in Michael's failure, but in her own magnificent becoming. He was left with the ashes of a life built on ego and ambition. She had risen from her own, discovering that within her were the embers of a fire far brighter and more enduring than the one he had tried to extinguish. She was not just a survivor. She was the architect of a new world built not on what was taken from her, but on the limitless strength she had finally found within herself. Emma Vance's story isn't just about money or revenge. It's a powerful reminder that our worth is never defined by who leaves us, but by what we build in the space they leave behind. She was discarded, underestimated, and left with nothing, but she discovered a strength she never knew she had. Her journey from a broken heart in a lonely apartment to a global philanthropist shows us that the ultimate victory is not in proving your doubters wrong, but in building a life so fulfilling that their opinion becomes completely irrelevant. It teaches us that sometimes the most devastating endings are just the universe's way of clearing the path for a truly spectacular new beginning. If Emma's story of resilience and triumph inspired you, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next story of incredible real-life drama. Thank you for listening.